The legacy Warner bodies saw this coming. At midnight, a video dropped online, and within seconds, millions of people were glued to their screens. A woman with tears running down her face whispered into the camera, "I am David Martinez's only wife, and I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this to protect my husband's name." The internet went crazy. For weeks, people had believed Ashley Stone's shocking story. They believed the DNA papers, the secret wedding photos, the whole thing. They believed a story that made David's memory look terrible. But in one heartbreaking moment, everything changed. This wasn't just some random person. This was the woman who had stayed quiet her whole life. No red carpet events, no social media posts, no fame at all. But she had the proof that would shut everyone up. The real marriage papers, hospital records, the death certificate, and a $200 million insurance check already in her name. But what really broke people's hearts was when her voice shook and she cried. "If Ashley's marriage is real, then my husband had 2 wives, and I know in my heart he would never do that." Fans were devastated. A wife drowning in pain. A man's reputation destroyed by lies. And a little girl, supposedly David's daughter, caught in the middle of lies, papers, and news headlines. Think about being that kid. Getting labeled, questioned, dragged into a war she didn't choose. Every day wondering, am I really his daughter, or just a piece in someone's game for money and attention? This wasn't about money anymore. This was about truth. About love. About a man who lived with honor, but whose name was getting torn apart. In the worst way. And that night, everything started falling apart. The quiet after that midnight video was scary. Millions watched in shock, seeing not just a crying woman, but the collapse of a story they thought they knew. For weeks, Ashley Stone had painted herself as the heartbroken widow, the secret wife, the one carrying David Martinez's hidden truth. Social media ate it up. Headlines called her the woman who had been wronged. But in that one video, with the shaking hands, the tear-stained face, the proof right there, the whole world realized that maybe, just maybe, Ashley wasn't telling the truth. The woman in that video didn't want attention. She wasn't fake. She wasn't acting. She looked completely broken. This wasn't some Hollywood performance. This was real, messy, human pain. And for the first time, people saw a side of David's story that Ashley had never shown them. She put the documents one by one in front of the camera. The marriage license with David's signature. The hospital files with his name. The death certificate. That made it final. And then the check. $200 million in insurance money. Her voice broke as she said, "This wasn't about fame. This wasn't about getting attention. This was about my husband and protecting what's left of his name." And then came the words that broke the internet. "If Ashley's marriage is real, then my husband lived a double life. But I swear to you, he wasn't that kind of man." The comments exploded. Fans cried. Some screamed in disbelief. Others turned on Ashley right away, flooding her Instagram with questions she couldn't answer. Screenshots of the documents went viral. In minutes. Twitter. Hashtags were trending worldwide. Hashtag justice for David. Hashtag truth over lies. Hashtag Ashley exposed. But the chaos didn't stay online. It moved to the courts. Her lawyers moved fast, filing emergency requests to show the documents officially. And with them came the bombshell. Handwritten letters from David himself. Real letters written in his own handwriting. You could tell it was his writing. Letters where he talked about having 1 wife, not 2. Letters where he wrote about his love, his trust, and his wish that if anything ever happened to him, she, the woman in that midnight video, would protect his memory. The world wasn't ready for that, because suddenly, this wasn't just proof. This was David speaking from beyond the grave. Think about being Ashley in that moment. For weeks, she stood tall, getting sympathy, getting headlines. And now, every bit of believability she had carefully built was falling apart right in front of everyone. Her claims of marriage weren't just sad romance anymore. They looked like a planned lie, a trick, a fake story. And fans started asking, was Ashley ever really in love, or was she just playing the part of a sad widow for the world to see? But the most heartbreaking part wasn't the fight between 2 women. It was the little girl in the center of it all. Ashley's supposed daughter, David's alleged child. A teenager thrown into the spotlight with her identity destroyed on social media. One day, she's being called David's daughter. The next, she's being called a fake. Strangers make memes about her. Reporters camp outside her school. Every friend she had now whispers behind her back. Is she really his daughter, or just part of Ashley's story. Think about that. A young girl supposedly grieving her father, now forced to prove she even exists to a world that doesn't believe her. A child treated not like a person, but like evidence. And her silence says everything. She hasn't posted online. She hasn't talked to reporters. But classmates leaked that she stopped going to school, that she cries in the bathroom when teachers say her name, that she once said, "I wish I didn't exist, because maybe then they'd leave me alone." Those words alone broke millions of hearts. Because whether she's really David's daughter or not, she's still a child. And kids shouldn't have to carry wars that adults started. But wars are exactly what this became. Ashley, once cheered as a sad widow, now found herself trapped. Paparazzi photos show her crying, covering her face, yelling at cameras. Her team rushed out press statements, saying the documents weren't real, claiming the video was edited, insisting that she had proof too. But things had changed. The sympathy was gone. What was left was doubt, questions, and the collapse of an image carefully built in the spotlight. Meanwhile, David's real wife, the woman who stayed hidden, who never wanted fame, became the tragic hero of this story. She doesn't post selfies. She doesn't call photographers. She just shows up in court, holding David's letters, whispering through tears, "I'm only fighting for my husband's truth." And the fans were left broken, torn between two stories, two women, two different worlds. But deep down, most knew the truth had been there long before this circus started. The truth was in the proof. The truth was in David's words. And the truth was slowly, painfully, destroying the lie Ashley had built. The question now wasn't just who was David's wife. The question was how far would Ashley go to protect her falling empire? Because if one midnight video could destroy her story, imagine what would happen when the courtroom lights came on, the evidence piled up, and the judge demanded the truth. And in the end, the saddest part remained. David Martinez, an icon, a legend, a man loved by millions, never got the chance to defend himself. The courtroom was silent, eerily silent. You could feel the tension in the air, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl, because everyone knows what's about to happen will change everything. On one side sat David's real wife, the woman from the midnight video, her face pale, her hands shaking as she held the stack of letters and documents that had already turned the internet upside down. On the other side sat Ashley Stone, surrounded by expensive lawyers. Her eyes were red from sleepless nights. Her body was shaking, but her pride made her keep her chin up. Cameras flashed from every corner. Reporters wrote frantically, and fans filled the seats just to watch history fall apart in real time. The judge's voice echoed, "Present the evidence." And just like that, the real collapse began. David's wife's lawyers showed the official marriage license first. It was undeniable. His signature, her name, the date, the official seal. Gasps filled the courtroom. Ashley's lawyers immediately objected, calling it fake. But the judge leaned forward, looking at it closely. His face showed nothing, but the crowd knew this wasn't some cheap fake paper. This was real. Then came the letters, the ones David had written with his own hand. His voice seemed to echo in the courtroom through the ink on those pages. One after another, letters were read out loud. "If anything ever happens to me, my wife should handle everything. She is my everything. She knows my heart. She carries my soul." People cried in the gallery. Reporters put down their cameras just to wipe their tears. Even the court clerk had to stop, her voice cracking as she read the words. David's love, his trust, his faith, it all pointed to one woman. And it wasn't Ashley. Ashley's face fell apart. The confidence, the image, the carefully built persona. It all melted away in front of the world. She buried her face in her hands, whispering frantically to her lawyers. The cameras caught every second, and within minutes, screenshots of her breakdown were viral. Hashtags like #AshleyBreaks and #collapse in court were trending around the globe. But the most heart-wrenching moment wasn't the marriage license, wasn't the letters, it was the video evidence. One of David's closest friends had given them a recording, an unseen clip of David in his final months, sitting at his kitchen table, looking tired but smiling softly. He spoke directly into the camera. "If anything happens to me, I want people to remember the truth. I had one wife, one woman. She knows who she is, and I pray she never has to fight for what's already hers." The courtroom froze. People sobbed. Ashley's lawyers tried to object, screaming about whether it was real, but the judge allowed it. The clip was raw, unedited, filled with David's unmistakable voice. There was no denying it anymore. Ashley Stone, the Hollywood powerhouse, the woman fans had loved for decades, now sat exposed, her credibility destroyed. But she didn't stay quiet. No, she broke. Jumping to her feet, her voice cracking. She screamed through tears. "He loved me too. You don't understand. He loved me." The courtroom exploded. Gasps filled the air. Reporters wrote like crazy. Fans stared in disbelief as Ashley Stone, polished, elegant Ashley, lost every bit of composure she had left. She cried. She begged. She shook her head violently. "You think I lied? You think I made this up? I was his everything, too." The judge banged the gavel, demanding order, but the damage was already done. Cameras had caught her collapse, her words, her breakdown, her desperation. It was all out there. And in the brutal world of public opinion, no amount of tears could erase the proof stacked against her. Outside the courthouse, chaos exploded. Fans held signs reading, "Justice for David," while others screamed for Ashley's arrest, calling her a fraud, a manipulator, a woman who dared to use a dead man's memory. Protesters chanted, news anchors cried on live TV, and social media flooded with heartbreaking edits of David's voice mixed with the tears of his wife. But behind the viral storm, a darker pain remained. The child, that young girl Ashley had claimed was David's daughter, now faced a reality even more brutal than before. With every headline, with every viral clip of her mother's collapse, her life shattered piece by piece. Reports leaked that she hadn't left her room in days. She stared at photos of David and whispered, "Was he really my father, or just a story my mum told?" Think about being that child, watching the world call your mother a liar, watching strangers mock your very existence, living every day with the haunting question, "Who am I?" And that question, her identity, became the next battlefield, because Ashley's team, desperate to save her case, announced a bombshell, a DNA test. They promised it would prove once and for all that David was indeed the father of Ashley's daughter. But David's wife's lawyers were ready. They demanded proof of how the samples were handled. They demanded to know which labs were used. They demanded authenticity, because in this war, every piece of evidence was either salvation or destruction. And the fans were left hanging, their hearts ripped open, waiting for answers that seemed impossible to bear. And in the middle of it all, one question burned louder than ever. If David were alive, would he survive this? Would his gentle heart, his quiet soul, his love for family, would it survive the circus his name had become? The truth is probably not, because even in death, David Martinez was being torn apart. His memory used, his name dragged through the mud, his family destroyed. And the saddest part, none of this was his choice. This wasn't just a courtroom battle. This was a public execution of a man's legacy. Ashley Stone, once a queen of Hollywood, now stood as the villain of a tragedy she could no longer control, and David's real wife, the woman who asked for nothing but truth, stood as the last thread holding his dignity together. The world watched, cried, and wondered how much more could collapse before the truth finally destroyed everything. Because one thing was certain, this wasn't the end. This was only the storm before the final reckoning. The world held its breath. For weeks, the court had battled over marriage licenses, letters, and memories. But now everything came down to one thing. DNA. The judge ordered silence as the envelope was carried in. The sound of paper shuffling echoed like thunder in the room. Ashley Stone sat forward, her hands clasped, her lips trembling. Across from her, David's true wife closed her eyes, clutching a photo of her husband against her chest. And in the middle of this storm, unseen but forever scarred, was a little girl waiting for the world to decide her identity. The report was opened. The judge's voice cracked as he began. According to the results of the DNA analysis, the probability of paternity between David Martinez and the minor child is ... Double quotes. The room leaned forward. Time seemed to stop. And then, in that one brutal announcement, the little girl's world shattered. The man she had been told was her father, the hero she believed shared her blood, was not hers at all. Think about being that child, your entire identity ripped from you on live television. Your existence turned into a trending hashtag. Overnight, she went from David's daughter to the child of lies. Reporters swarmed schools, digging through her past. Social media exploded with cruel comments, memes, and viral videos. Strangers debated whether she should be pitied or blamed. And through it all, one heartbreaking truth remained. She was just a child, innocent, blameless, broken. Meanwhile, David's real wife stood in court, tears streaming down her face. She hadn't come for revenge, hadn't come to destroy anyone. She only wanted her husband's name cleared, his honor restored. But even in victory, her heart ached, because what was left to celebrate when her husband's memory had been dragged through the mud, and a child's soul had been crushed under the weight of adult lies? The fallout was immediate. Hollywood turned its back on Ashley Stone. Sponsorships disappeared. Projects were cancelled. The same magazines that once praised her now had headlines like Ashley's Web of Lies and Collapse of a Queen. Friends distanced themselves. Fans who once adored her flooded social media with betrayal. And in one haunting clip, outside the courthouse, Ashley was seen screaming through tears, "I loved him. I loved him," before being rushed away by security. But the pain didn't stop there. For David's family, the scars ran deeper than ever. His name was no longer just about art, talent, and love. It was now forever tied to scandal, courtroom battles, and viral breakdowns. His wife, standing outside the courthouse, whispered to cameras, "I just want my husband remembered for the man he was, not for this circus." Her voice broke. Fans cried with her. The world cried with her. And the little girl reports leaked that she had been put into counseling. At night, she cried herself to sleep, asking questions no child should ever have to ask. Why did my mum lie? Why does the world hate me? Was I never enough? Teachers said she no longer spoke in class. Neighbors said she stopped playing outside. Her childhood had been stolen, not by David, but by a story built on lies. The tragedy became bigger than one courtroom. It became a mirror for society. How far would people go for money, fame, or headlines? How much damage could lies do when wrapped around the name of a man who only wanted love and peace? And perhaps the most haunting part was the what if. What if David had been alive to defend himself? Would he have held his wife's hand, looked the world in the eye, and shut down the lies before they spread? Would he have lifted that child into his arms, refusing to let her innocence be crushed? Or would the weight of betrayal, scandal, and humiliation have broken him, too? We'll never know. Because David Martinez, the man whose smile once lit up screens, whose talent inspired millions, was gone, and all that remained was a battlefield over his ghost. In the weeks that followed, vigils were held. Fans lit candles outside his old home. They sang, they prayed, they cried. Murals appeared on walls across the country, his face painted in bright colors, surrounded by words like truth, love, and legacy. But behind the beauty of those tributes lay unshakable pain. Because no mural, no candle, no song could erase the tragedy of what had unfolded. A wife left broken, a child left lost, a woman left destroyed, and a man's memory forever scarred. The story wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was tragedy in its rawest form, the kind that makes you question humanity itself. And in the end, only one truth remained. When lies are built on the back of love, everyone loses. David's wife lost her peace. Ashley lost her crown. The little girl lost her childhood, and the world lost the chance to remember a man the way he deserved. This wasn't just drama. This wasn't just gossip. This was the collapse of a legacy. A love story turned to ashes. A tragedy that will haunt fans forever. And as the world moves forward, one question still lingers in the silence. If David could see all of this from above, what would break his heart more? The lies that dragged his name or the tears of the people left behind? And now, as we stand at the end of this heartbreaking journey, one truth is undeniable. David Martinez's story is no longer just his own. It has become a mirror of love, betrayal, lies, and the unbearable pain left behind. A wife torn apart, a child stripped of her innocence, and a legacy that deserved honor, but was drowned in scandal. Think about it. A man who gave the world laughter, hope, and inspiration is now remembered not just for his brilliance, but for the storm that followed his death. And the saddest part, he never got the chance to defend himself. His voice was silenced before the world needed it most. So the question is, what do we do with this truth? Do we just scroll past it? Do we let his memory fade under hashtags and gossip? Or do we together fight to remember the man he really was? Because beyond the noise, beyond the courtroom, beyond the collapse, there was David, a human being, a husband, a man who wanted nothing more than love, peace, and legacy. And if we don't hold on to that truth, then all of this pain will have been for nothing. So here's what I ask of you. Don't let his story die in lies. Share this. Talk about it. Keep his name alive for the right reasons. Let the world know that even in the face of betrayal, love is stronger. Truth is stronger. legacy is stronger. Because David Martinez deserved better. His wife deserved better. That little girl deserved better. And the world deserves to remember the truth. Don't just watch. Be part of the fight to keep his memory alive.